All right, welcome back to another video. My name is Ian Major. I'm an entrepreneur, Bitcoin pleb, and all-around raging capitalist. And in today's video, I am very excited to be going into a deeper overview of stacks. If you haven't yet checked out my sort of recent intro to DeFi on Bitcoin video, I'd invite you to check it out. I'll provide a link in the description down below. But in that video, I sort of outlined some of the different categories of ways that folks are extending the utility and functionality of Bitcoin, whether that's on top of the Bitcoin based protocol or sort of around it. And Stacks is a really, really interesting example of that we will be digging into today. So I'm going to go through what is Stacks, how does it work. We're going to get into some pretty good detail around their sort of novel proof of transfer mechanism, and how Stacks sort of anchors into Bitcoin. So buckle up. It should be a fantastic ride. For those who are returning to the channel, welcome back, my friends, as always. And for those new to the channel, welcome to you as well. I know many of you are not subscribed. And so if you like this content, consider subscribing, because we're churning out now 2 videos a week. There is just so much exciting stuff to cover in the Bitcoin universe. And by doing so, this also helps get these messages and tools to more folks on their quest for becoming financially sovereign, which is what this channel is all about. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into what is Stacks and how does it work. All right, buckle up. This one was a fun one to research just because I think Stacks is doing some really, really interesting stuff. So what is Stacks? As we can see kind of verbatim from their site, so Stacks 2.0 was launched earlier this year in January, and it is a standalone blockchain that uses Bitcoin as a sort of secure anchor and settlement layer, and its sort of mission is to create this kind of user-owned internet and bring broader, more generalized smart contract functionality to Bitcoin. And, you know, I love this philosophy, right? You've heard me talk on the channel a number of times about this idea that, you know, you could build all the cool stuff you want, right? You could build all these decentralized apps. And indeed, that is the way forward, right? We want decentralization in as many parts of our lives as possible, because we've seen what happens when power structures and technology become centralized, etc. However, what I've also been saying this whole time is that if you're building all of that on a shaky foundation, or on a foundation that is changing, you know, that compromises the integrity, or could compromise the integrity of everything you're building on top. And so Bitcoin is purposefully simple in its design. You know, its scripting language is purposefully narrow, such that there's, you know, minimized attack surface. And so what Stacks is really demonstrating and proving is the ability to extend Bitcoin's utility while keeping Bitcoin kind of as it is, which has made it this sort of rock solid and stable settlement layer for value exchange and settlement that we've seen, you know, operate in an adversarial environment, right? Honey badger don't care, all that good stuff. So the way to sort of conceptually visualize this, and shout out to Dan Held, who's put out a very nice summary on Stacks himself. I'm borrowing some of his always excellent visuals, and so I'll link his post in the description down below so you can check it out as well. But the way to sort of visualize this is the following, right? You have Bitcoin as this sort of most immutable settlement layer for finality. And so Stacks is sort of operating in this visual on top, but really it's more sort of adjacent to Bitcoin. But ultimately, Stacks is anchoring into Bitcoin as a base layer. So, you know, think of all these different kind of smart contract transactions that could be on the Stacks blockchain. What's happening is that hashes connected to those different smart contracts and transactions are being embedded into the Bitcoin blockchain themselves. And so in this way, you know, if you were to want to rearrange the Stacks blockchain to enrich yourself or attack it or whatever, you would have to go and reorganize the Bitcoin blockchain, which is, of course, an absolutely, you know, insurmountable obstacle to do. So Bitcoin gives you that stability and finality, the source of truth, if you will. And then Stacks is what extends the capabilities towards smart contracts, etc. And then on top of Stacks, you could imagine all manner of different decentralized applications, the sort of Web 3.0 we've been hearing so much about for the last few years. And so that's all very interesting. So Stacks really is doing some interesting stuff. It's led by a pretty phenomenal team, led by Munib Ali, I guess formerly of Blockstack. I'm not quite sure what the kind of organizational connection is between Stacks and Blockstack, but suffice to say, these guys have been working on this for quite some time. Stacks, the token, so we'll talk about this, right? STX is the sort of token that would essentially serve as the fuel for these smart contracts on the Stacks blockchain. That was issued in 2019 as the first SEC qualified token offering. Not to say that is a litmus test for something we should consider, right? I think those of you who have watched this channel know that I'm not not a huge proponent and fan of regulations anyways, but it just serves to demonstrate that these guys know what they're doing. So what I want to jump into is how this actually works. And let's start with the novel consensus mechanism that is proof of transfer. As we do that, let's also kind of take a step back and just think about some of the different consensus mechanisms that are out there. This is a handy sort of quick summary from one of Stacks' white papers, again, which I will link in the description down below. But many of us are familiar with proof of work, of course, right? You're kind of directly translating electricity towards the minting of new units, such as Bitcoin, right? And so this is real, tangible work being done in order to earn the newly issued Bitcoin and to keep the network moving forward in terms of placing the next block on the blockchain. Proof of stake is essentially where you're dedicating economic stake, so the actual kind of token itself, in order to be a kind of validator of the network, and in doing so, earn that cryptocurrency as well. I've talked in prior videos about the potential pitfalls of proof of stake. I think it just is a de facto kind of centralizing force, right? And it's really just similar to what we see today in our fiat world, where people who have the most control the most. And so, again, just a quick sidebar there. You also have proof of burn, right? This idea that in order to mint new units of a particular cryptocurrency, you have to destroy another, what we might call base cryptocurrency. And so this would entail kind of sending, for example, Bitcoin to burn addresses which cannot be recovered. Proof of transfer, in a way, is a more generalized form of proof of burn, except that instead of destroying, in this case, Bitcoin, it actually gets transferred, hence proof of transfer, to other participants in the network. Let's take a look at how that actually works. Again, shout out to Dan for a number of these visuals. But basically, Stacks miners have to spend Bitcoin, okay? So they have to actually spend Bitcoin in order to potentially win the chance to write the next block on the Stacks blockchain. And so as you can see at the sort of top of this, the miner spends Bitcoin. There is a verifiable random function that selects the leader or selects the sort of winner, right? And that winner is who wins the right to place the next block of the Stacks blockchain. And this block, as we'll see in just a moment, is intricately connected or inherently connected to the Bitcoin blockchain, because all the sort of hashes or information corresponding to the transactions in the Stacks block is being codified as part of the Bitcoin transactions that these miners are making when they spend them. So that is the sort of clever mechanism by which these blockchains are sort of connected. And as you follow the visual here from left to right, that Bitcoin that is spent by miners is transferred to individuals called stackers. And so these stackers are locking up their stacks tokens. And in doing that, they are sort of signaling towards the tip of the chain, right? So they're providing input on the state of the Stacks blockchain towards the sort of tip of the chain, the version of the blockchain that is kind of the latest and greatest. And so that information is, of course, helpful for miners. So you've got miners who are spending Bitcoin in order to earn stacks, and then you've got stackers who are locking up their stacks to participate in consensus, and they're earning Bitcoin as a reward. So this is also a novel way to earn some Bitcoin. Very, very interesting. And as we follow the cycle through here, the miner is then writing the block on the Stacks blockchain and receiving the newly minted stacks plus transaction fees as we discussed. And so, as we were alluding to earlier, this is a really, really interesting kind of connection mechanism. So you basically have, for example, on the left here, you could have any number of these kind of micro blocks, as they are called, and different transactions, whereby there's this sort of anchor block. So the way this cycle we were just looking at operates is through reward cycles, which are about 2 weeks long. And so at the start of each reward cycle, you have the establishment of this anchor block, which is the sort of tip of the chain, if you will. And for the rest of that reward cycle, miners have to build on top of that anchor block. There could be any number of transactions, thousands, even millions of smart contract transactions on these, in these different sort of boxes on the left that can all be tied to a single, Bitcoin block and Bitcoin transaction. And so that information is being hashed and written into Bitcoin such that a Stacks miner can observe the state of the Bitcoin blockchain and gather information about the Stacks blockchain. And so in this way, Bitcoin itself contains an archive of all the different Stacks blocks and information of those transactions therein, which is really, really interesting. So Bitcoin, in this way, is the settlement protocol that supports the Stacks blockchain. I would encourage you to check out the white paper if you are so interested. I find it quite interesting. Again, I will link this in the description down below. And a few other kind of just details around how that works. You can see here spelled out some of the parameters for the process, including the kind of block reward for stacks, how the blocks are being connected, and some other pieces as well. There's a good amount, by the way, on this kind of stacking threshold, meaning how many stacks do you need in order to participate, in order to participate in earning Bitcoin as a reward for stacking. Right now, I think that number, if you were to do it on your own, is like 90,000 stacks tokens, which is quite a lot. I think the price in fiat right now is about $1. And so, the way to get around that is they allow delegation. And so when we talk in the next section about how you can get started, if this is so interesting to you, we'll talk about how to do that with a smaller amount. One just final note here on the actual kind of smart contract language itself, because I do think it's interesting. So Solidity is the well-known smart contract language used in the Ethereum ecosystem. Clarity is a new smart contract language used within the Stacks ecosystem. And we can kind of see a sort of comparison here, but the couple of key points are that Clarity is not Turing complete. So meaning you can kind of analyze all the possible outcomes of the code without actually executing it. With a Turing complete language such as Solidity, that may or may not be the case. And so you may just have to run the code in order to see what happens. And that can, of course, create, unwanted bugs and issues. So that's sort of nice. Clarity is also a decidable language, which means, understanding how the contract would be terminated and the transaction fees can be guaranteed upfront, which is not the case with Solidity. And it's an interpreted programming language as well, which means contracts are written in a human readable form as opposed to the sort of machine binary that's kind of compiled down. So again, just some commentary. I do think as I've looked at this ecosystem evolving, this is going to be a pretty big deal, and it'll be interesting to see what developers want to kind of embrace Clarity for some of the benefits that we just noted. So that was a lot. There's definitely a lot more detail on kind of how the consensus works. But for me, after analyzing this closely, I think it's really interesting. I think this idea of anchoring into Bitcoin as your settlement and finality layer, as the ultimate source of truth, is absolutely what you want to be doing. Now, potential limitations with this approach, like it remains to be seen how this sort of loop of mining and stacking will actually, evolve. I could certainly see a world in which mining could become quite centralized, right? If you have miners who are spending Bitcoin and then themselves are also kind of stacking stacks to earn more Bitcoin to that, right? Like you could get into this sort of interesting loop. They do anticipate that in one of the white papers near the end of it, and provide some ideas for how that might be averted. But it is something to be wary of and interested in. But I do think it is a novel way to stack Bitcoin, very interesting, and two, I do think this is as robust a way as possible to create a broader range of smart contract functionality in a way that doesn't sort of in a way that is as built on Bitcoin as you possibly can be, right? I can't think of a stronger, more robust way to do that. I'm sure the space will evolve, but that is worth noting as well. So interesting stuff. Let's now talk about how to acquire this, how to stack if you are so interested. All right. So just to reiterate, this is not none of this is ever financial advice, right? And this is not an outright sort of recommendation to go and stack a bunch of stacks. But I am personally very bullish on this overall sort of DeFi on Bitcoin space, and I think Stacks has, in my view, the best approach out of all the different things I've seen. So take that for what it's worth. I personally have acquired some stacks just so I can give the stacking process a try, which I'm doing on OKCoin. I will show you that in just a moment. I'm always looking for new ways to stack more sats. But again, as it relates to sort of the stacks token itself, it very much remains to be seen. But again, I'm very optimistic about this space in general. So for those of you who have watched this, please do your own research as always. But if you've done that and you're sort of like, okay, how do I get started? There's a couple different exchanges that are currently offering stacks. Binance, Gate.io, KuCoin, and OKCoin are probably the main ones, at least that I'm aware of. There's probably others, so feel free to comment those down below as well. And then in terms of how to actually do the stacking process, I can't speak personally for all of the exchanges that I just listed out, but I myself am using OKCoin to do it. You can also go to Stacks Wallet, so I will link this as well. This is where you can manage your Stacks holdings, participate in stacking, and connect with some of the different apps that are out there. So that list is quite interesting and is growing quite quickly. There's a lot of capital going into this space. Stacks has recently launched an accelerator program. So there's a number of kind of companies and organizations building applications on the Stacks technology stack, which is all very exciting. So you can check all that out with the Stacks wallet. But for me, again, I've acquired some stacks on OKCoin, and just to kind of see what the stacking process looks like. OKCoin makes it unbelievably easy. And so you basically, have this option once you acquire some stacks in the kind of earn tab within OKCoin. And then you'll basically just see this very simple menu where you elect how much stacks you want to stack and the number of stacking cycles. Is it 1 cycle or 12 cycles? And the duration of a cycle is approximately 14 days. You put in a number, it'll kind of estimate some earnings, the unlock date, and there's some FAQs as well. As you saw, the APY associated with this right now is about 10%, which is absolutely insane. And I don't think that's just a kind of temporary thing. Like that could fluctuate up. It could fluctuate down, certainly, depending on the ratio of Bitcoin being spent by Stacks miners and the ratio of Stacks holders participating in the stacking process. So pretty cool. If you are so interested in OKCoin, I've provided a referral link in the description. You can earn $10 in Bitcoin if you sign up with that link. Hey, we all got to stack more sats somehow. Don't at me for this. But again, check that out if you are so inclined. So with all that out of the way, let's go ahead and wrap this video up. All right, so we covered a lot of ground as promised. Just as a quick recap, we looked at what is Stacks, right? It's this kind of standalone layer 1 blockchain that is linked to Bitcoin in terms of how this sort of mining and stacking process works in their proof of transfer consensus mechanism. Proof of transfer is a sort of more generalized proof of burn mechanism whereby miners are expending Bitcoin. So think about that, right? Like Bitcoin represents a real, trade from energy expenditure. And so in this way, it's essentially extending Bitcoin's proof of work towards securing the Stacks blockchain. And so miners are spending actual Bitcoin that, they won't get back. And those, using this kind of verifiable random function, a leader is being chosen out of those expenditures to write the next block to the Stacks blockchain, thereby earning Stacks as a reward. And then the Bitcoin that's being expended actually go to the Stacks holders who are stacking on the system, who are, providing that signaling to achieve consensus. Very, very interesting stuff. As I said, I really can't think of a more elegant way, at least at this stage, to kind of develop a more general purpose smart contract functionality within the Bitcoin ecosystem that fundamentally rests on the integrity and immutability and settlement finality that is the Bitcoin-based protocol. But this is a space that is moving extremely, extremely fast, so we will. It remains to be seen. But I hope you found this informative, valuable, useful. If you did, you already know what to do. Give this video a like. Comment down below with your thoughts, questions, other topics and themes that you'd like to see covered in the future within this theme of kind of DeFi on Bitcoin, but also outside of that. But for now, we'll go ahead and leave this video here. As always, every sat counts. And until next time, I'll see you.